Hello, Emily. How are you?
I'm good, thank you. How are you?
Cool. I'm very happy to have you around us. I've got my background that
Yes,
is familiar to you,
I
of
know it
course.
well. Yes.
So it's so cool that you have joined us because it so fits aspects of what we want to do that you clearly have as part of your what you do at the core of what you do. That it
Mhm.
is amazing if we can incorporate in the general things that everybody else can do, especially people that are studying in the field. So tell us a little bit about how you fit into intergenerational music making and what you're doing with the group.
Yeah, my role specifically, or as an organization?
Your role specifically, let's start with there. Let's understand who you are.
Great. So my name's Emily, and I actually studied at ACM back in I think I graduated in 2016. And actually it was an opportunity that came up from being part of ACM, and I studied community music and that aspect of things, and volunteered for a community project that was being delivered. And it was my first sort of introduction into this world of intergenerational music and what that meant for, how music could be used within the community, benefiting both the young and the old, but also bringing people together in this really wonderful and unique way. And then the organization is kind of expanded. So my passion was really kind of sat within community. And I wanted to find these new ways of creating spaces that were really kind of informal and offered opportunities for people across different generations, but different backgrounds to come together to create new connections. So we use music as just the vehicle to get to connection. It's all rooted in community, it's rooted in connection, and in providing these spaces where voices that maybe we don't hear every day have a platform to be able to express themselves, to be able to share their stories, to celebrate who they are, but in a way that gives them the opportunity to socialize and make links within their community, at the root of it, tackling isolation and loneliness and supporting mental health and well-being. So
Am
it's
I
been
am I, sorry to because that's making me think. Am I going too far? Do you think this is the way we're coded as humans? When we were small tribes, did everybody had a voice and they sang together? Do you think
so
it's
this is,
just
I mean, this is where I think my passion stems from. The background I studied international development and the place that music has within that. And I think it became so clear within that studying that music is as old as time, and it is innate in every one of us. So when we're a baby, the cries that a baby makes, the tempo of our heartbeats, that's all very musical. It's the rhythm that's within us. And I think a lot of people grow up, especially within our Western societies, and we have this detachment from music, or you think, I've not studied, or I can't sing and I can't connect to music in that way. But actually it's so part of how we are built and how we, how we communicate. That's a melody in which we communicate. How we walk, there's a rhythm and a tempo to how we walk. And I think reconnecting with that is powerful when we realize that actually this isn't something that's out of reach and really far away. It's something that we do every day, and we, we have within just how we are and how we live. But as you said, the tribes back old as time, oral history. This is so many people. I studied a lot in Africa cultures and Indian cultures, and how they transmit history and identity from one generation to another comes from music. And you look at the sort of the R&B music, or you look at how people dance, the side stepping, the two where your feet are very close together. Well, that came from, when they were slaves and their feet were shackled and they couldn't move very far. So all of these traditions and these ideas of how people used to live can be so easily transmitted and translated through music. And I think that's the power of it. And once we realize that and can reconnect to that, there's this unstoppable sort of power in using music day to day.
absolutely? That's quite cool. Did so? Did that study of other cultures, was that part of what you did at ACM, or did you do that also afterwards?
No, so I studied at ACM. I did creative artistry, so it was very much rooted in, becoming an artist. But while being there, I did community music and music therapy. And I think for me, what I realized was how music just can go so far beyond the individual. And it really changed how I saw my own sort of passion for music and songwriting, but how I could use that on this totally different level of, reaching other people, giving other people a voice, providing ways for connection. And then I went on and did my master's at SOAS in London and studied international development and music, so where music sits within conflict resolution or oral history, healing, psychiatry, and so it just has really built this very big sort of interlocking maze of where music just sits in every aspect of how we live and how we interact and communicate. And I think that's really at the root of you know what we do at IMM and through our programs. Is music is just the vehicle, but it's all of the ripple of connection and tackling health inequalities and creating work environments and all these spaces. Music is just the tool to get us to these bigger places, because you know we know music both scientifically and anecdotally is this universal language. Everyone can connect, everyone can relate, everyone has a song that you know they hear it and it takes them to a different place, or it calms them or releases stress, or you know allows them to kind of make sense of different emotions that we have. And so having music as that tool to help us do that is so kind of freeing and non-judgmental. And I think as soon as you realize that we have this you know free and very accessible tool to use, there's such a big power in that and how we can use it.
Absolutely. Yeah, I was listening to an expert in conflict resolution, and they were describing how a very difficult thing you need to do is acknowledge what the other person is going through.
Empathy.
And when you're trying to exercise this, immediately one side says, so I need to recognize that it's my fault. And I'm like, no, just acknowledge what they're going through.
Yes. Yeah.
Just acknowledge how they feel, the trauma, they're upset. And if you think about it, what you're describing when people are singing together, when you're listening them sing, you're acknowledging who they are, their voice, and how they feel. So
Yeah.
it is a basic act of belonging and acknowledging the presence and the spirit
Absolutely.
of the other.
Yeah, you said you know belonging. There's an incredible sort of social action movement called Kulalum, and they bring together groups across Jerusalem and Israel, and it's all, and again it just shows that you know the power that music has to transcend religion and barriers and conflict and all these things. And they get these people from all different backgrounds and religions and beliefs in this room together, and they teach them a song, and you know they're standing next to someone who they you know don't share the same belief to, or you know can't see their way of living, but that music and being united in that song just has this extraordinary power to you know bash down all of those barriers or all of those sort of preconceptions and prejudices against the other person. And yeah, I mean it's I get goosebumps thinking about the power that music has, and I'm so passionate about
it shows. I can see it. I can tell even through across
Yeah.
Zoom. I can tell that it's obvious. Yeah, it's funny because I used to think sometimes it was an easy resource when you were writing a plot, the voice and the, like in 6 Feet Under, the gay character found his place through singing in a choir. So it felt a bit like a trite, but then through experience and through seeing what you describe and conflict resolution, you realize is not an easy resource. It is the truth. It is, you know, that's what it is to sing together. And when you are not belonging, that's part of what can help you. You know, the minimum amount of humanity is a community, is not one person.
Absolutely.
An expression of it is to sing together. Yeah.
Yeah.
Amazing. So what do you do when, what's the process when you're setting up an event or an experience like the one that surrounds me? Is there, how do you approach this?
So just to give you a background of kind of what it is, because it is quite an emerging kind of professional field. So intergenerational music is this art of bringing together different generations for sort of the mutual benefit of both the young and the old. So we use music as the tool, but lots of people, you might use art or nature or, you know, other things, sports. But ideally it's using music to bridge the gap between people. And you know, as I said before, music provides this opportunity for us to share who we are, to share our history and our identity and our cultures. And so when you bring together two groups within, you know, a really safe space, so much, you know, that it's transformative for both the young and the old. So in terms of the picture behind you, a lot of the work that we do is within the care sector. So we work a lot in care homes, working with older people who are maybe isolated and lonely, people living with dementia, with mental health. and we connect them with a local primary school or youth group or secondary school or, you know, university students, and deliver very bespoke 6-week projects or workshops or events that are very tailored to meet the needs of those individuals. So, you know, it's about understanding what the level of need is there, who these people are, what they would respond to, and then for us to just facilitate that session, you know, promoting through the activities, promoting connection. So everything that we do within those sessions has this music therapy thinking. So it's, you know, it's not that really clinical, inaccessible world, but it's understanding why we are doing what we're doing. So by, you know, choosing this hello song or encouraging the use of instruments, what benefit is that going to have on the residents and the children, and how is that going to have an impact, you know, on the long term? So again, it's, you know, in a massive part of the work we do is about empowering people to understand why music, and, you know, the benefit that it has both on the individual person but also collectively, and how you can use different songs or styles of singing or activities to really promote that connection and to empower individuals to be you know, a real part of how that group is produced and what is created.
So how does that work in practice? Like, do people that are participating, do they all understand the process and what they're doing and the objectives and why the choice of songs that you that you described, or are they just invited to an event? And then, so how much do you articulate the intention of what?
Yeah. So for me, I always, when delivering a project, if I introduce a hello song, I will make a conscious effort of, you know, expressing why that. So for example, we often take, you know, a well-known tune and we'll change the words to create a hello song. There might be some rhythms in it. So it's the idea that, you know, we start with a rhythm and you want to create that sense of togetherness. So we're all going to find this rhythm together. We're going to wait till everyone has that rhythm so that we're all in it together. Then we're going to introduce the melody, which is a well-known song, so everyone can kind of click onto that and they understand, you know, it's accessible medium for them to understand. So for example, we use a lot of We Will Rock You, so hello, hello everyone, so everyone knows it's a really well-known rhythm, but then also you're introducing people's names, so you might say hello, hello Chimo, and in that one you're then being brilliant, you're then acknowledging the people that are in the space, so they get a sense of, you know, I'm part of this, I belong, you know, I'm being acknowledged. So, and I will always kind of lay that process out so people understand, you know, what it is about it. In terms of sort of how we deliver projects, there's always an element of training that goes into the projects, and usually that training is catered towards the care staff or the teachers or volunteers or music students that will be part of that group, and the idea is always, you know, it's this idea of sustaining and embedding this practice within people's care plans and within the curriculum and the community. And so by giving people that understanding of why music, so there is, you know, a bit of theory and knowledge around musicking and music therapy and all of these things, but then the practical hands-on, you know, feeling it and experiencing it for yourself and then being able to take that and continue it. So, you know, it might be that we do a session with a group of care staff and then they start to deliver the project, so they will be the
Oh,
facilitator
so
that
you first, with the care staff, you first involve them and have them do a reduced group or whatever with only with the carers, and then you.
Yeah, so every group is every project and event is so different, but for example, we might engage with 4 care staff at a care home. We might go and run a morning of training where we give them the theory and knowledge and the practical skills, and then for 6 weeks post that we will deliver a session, and this might be working very collaboratively with that care staff member, so supporting them and giving them confidence to be able to deliver the sessions ultimately. So the 6 weeks we'll be working with a group of children that come in every week from the school, usually the same time, same day every week, just to keep that routine for everyone. So you'll have a group of children and a group of residents, you'll have the care staff there and the IMM team. And yes, there'll be that thinking as we deliver, but there'll be more support given to that care staff so that when we do take a step back, that work can still continue. So we're building, the aim of the work that we do is building that connection between the care home and the school and really nurturing that connection through the 6-week project, so that post the project, you know, the children don't just come in at Christmas to sing carols, but maybe they come in once a week, different classes come in, or they take their homework in and they sit with the elders, and or they, you know, create this pen pal scheme or whatever it might be. And I think sort of the thinking behind that is that I think often when older people go into a care home, they kind of become redundant from society, and there's this sort of age stigma and segregation that comes when people are no longer in the workforce necessarily. But actually these people have so much to give still and so much to offer.
Yeah.
And actually you've got kids that are learning about World War II in school. Well,
Yeah.
these people down the road, they lived it. So why don't we go in and,
Yeah.
sing more songs and think about their experience? And, it comes back to that empathy and actually understand what it felt like to be part of that,
Yeah.
give context to what we're learning. And I think that's what it is. It's creating these bonds that actually will enhance and support both groups.
Yeah.
Again, taking children into a care home, they might not have ever seen that or understand what that looks like. And
No.
so you're building so much empathy and recognition for how people live and what that community looks like, and also teaching this younger generation to seek out these people that are maybe isolated within our community. So
Yeah.
forward future thinking, trying to tackle those issues that are very much present across our communities at the minute, especially with COVID and
Yeah.
how and
Yeah. I think, for me, we are we are animals at heart in many of these things of how we behave, and it's a bit like a puppy. When you have a puppy, you need to introduce them to older dogs for the development to grow. And I've heard there are studies that show that children grow up more resilient, stronger emotionally,
Mhm.
and more stable if there is elderly women around them,
Yeah.
because it's something that sociologists and anthropologists are wondering, why are we coded to
Yeah.
stop, the female reproduction finishes and they tend to live so long.
Mm,
What is this? And it is because this the social animals we are, because
exactly.
it's not only taking care of them because but they are valuable to our children as well. It's
Mm,
part of the strength of the tribe. So I
absolutely.
totally see. Yeah.
And I think you find in different cultures, so the African cultures, Indian cultures, you generally have generations that live together for quite a long period of time. But you find that in the UK and other Western places, children will not live near their grandparents, or when they go to university they go far, and you have this massive age segregation between, and it is, we miss out on so much not having that
So
constant
much.
interaction with the older generation. And on the other side, the older generation not having younger people to be able to communicate and share ideas with. So all the work that we do is trying to really close that gap between the
Yeah.
generations. Yeah.
So I'm curious, how has this affected you personally and socially? Are you, when you're with your friends hanging out or with your family, do you sometimes observe this and behave? Has this affected the way you are socially in your private life as well?
Absolutely. Yeah. I think before, on a personal level, before I got into this work, obviously, I had grandparents and things like that, but I never thought about, people living in care homes, or even, I mean, a massive thing for me is people living at home on their own. And, the impact that not having regular opportunities to socialize can actually have on, your mental and physical well-being. It's so fundamental to how we live and how we are to have regular interaction and socialization. And so, when I'm out and about, I feel like I'm heightened awareness wise. I'm always looking for, you know, people, and I have such a passion for people, and I think it's my passion is that everyone has, a story and a place and a part to how we live and how we function. And everything I do, I mean, is very rooted in music. So part of everything I do is, how do we use music to get to this stage, to get to a place where people can be recognized and have this part to play. So yeah, I would say when I'm out and about, I'm always pointing things out to people, or I think it's about raising awareness, isn't it? So everything I do,
Yeah.
I try not to put my hat on of, working and advocating all the time, but
Yeah.
it's making people aware that there's, life is so much bigger than us. And I think a lot of times we get so wrapped up in our own worries, and obviously everyone has their things and what they're struggling with, but there's so much more to our community and to our life and to the part that we can play in other people's lives. And if there's something that you can do, it actually, I feel so fulfilled when I can do something that can benefit or support someone else. Um, there's a real sense of, pride in doing that, and also being able to use the thing that you love. I love music and I love songwriting and all of these things. And if I can use that to help someone else or to give someone else an idea or support them in any way, then that's an incredible thing that I've got to offer, I would say.
Absolutely. I sometimes think also, I mean, our master's students, they're all very aware, very interesting young people, but sometimes the fear of growing old and the obsession with perfect use would benefit a lot from realizing how interesting and powerful elderly are. So then, in a very practical way, those young people would see that you don't have to be afraid of growing old, that you don't, that, being vulnerable, but also having that to offer as part of growing old is part of the cycle, and it's a good thing. So you don't, it's not a weird thing aging. It's
Wow.
like it is part of when you are also serving them, you're also cleaning your mind from the weird panic of
Yeah, breaking down that stigma, isn't it, that and I think that's a lot of media and how these care homes and growing old is shown across how we live and everything like that. But when you meet these people and you break down that barrier of fear of growing older, they're still so full of life and love and things to share and stories to tell, and it makes you excited to get to that point of having all of that knowledge that you can pass on to people and still being so full of life. And it's a wonderful thing to see in action. I mean, I could spend hours talking to older people about the stories that they have and the lives that they've lived, and it's wonderful to get to hear that and to give them that space.
Yeah. So I'm curious about, in your practice, what do you feel limits what you do? What I mean, there's many things obviously that I can imagine with stigma and budgets. What is a thing that you feel like you're constantly challenged by, that you're trying to overcome? Is there any specific aspect of your job?
I think there's funding is a massive thing. It's always a massive thing, and I think that comes from recognition of the importance of the work, which definitely has been. We're making big progress since COVID, because the world turned to music, so everyone understood, oh, music is quite a powerful tool and it makes people feel and connect. Amazing. And also how important socialization is, because we were also isolated and distant. So I think people now have this heightened empathy for people who live alone or people who are within care homes. So I think funding is always a big barrier, and that's just kind of getting the message across of how important this is. I think secondly, I mean, one of our models and a model that I'm really passionate about is our community kind of music model. And that comes from when we started, we were very much working in care homes and within the care sector. And I took a step back and I was thinking, oh, you either have to be in a school or a care home to benefit from this work. And actually this, can encompass so many more people and provide so many more opportunities. And so I launched our intergenerational community hub model, which was a model that was open to the public, that engaged with the likes of Age UK or social prescribing to reach those people that lived within the community that maybe lived alone, or mums and babies that felt a bit isolated, or students. We worked with the ACM when we first launched at the Electric Theatre. But it was creating this community space where people could access music, regular socialization, and be part of something that was really positive, for their week, to fill their week. And I think something that has been, that I've thought about for the last couple of years since launching it is how do we reach those people that live at home, that are isolated, but that aren't on any registers of anything, those people that actually need this sort of work or this sort of group more than anyone else, but are really hard to reach. It's those kind of invisible people, to say the least. And that's always been kind of an issue for me. And I know there's a group of us that I work with that are kind of trying to find a route or a way to engage with these people. that really could benefit from this work, but that aren't forthcoming or part of anything that would get them involved. So that's always been a thing. It's the engaging the people that need it the most, and being able to offer that to them.
So for that, so where do you usually, what are the stakeholders that you look for financing, and where do you look
For funding?
for funding? What is the main place?
So it's very kind of blended. We use a lot of community foundations. So our work is both local and national, but locally we will build projects or events that respond directly to that local need. So whether, like, I've just launched one in quite a deprived area of Manchester, where there's a real limited access to music. They don't have instruments in schools, and they don't have a designated music teacher. So there was a kind of a real need there that we identified, and we built a project to kind of respond directly to that. And another place down in Surrey, we were working with kids that were on the sort of cusp of being part of the criminal justice system, and their kind of language was drill music. So we created a project that kind of responded to them. So we build projects that are very locally responsive, and then get community foundation funding. We also work a lot with the Arts Council, with the National Lottery. We have just launched our first partnership with the NHS, so been commissioned by the NHS and local commissioning groups to deliver the project on a larger scale across a whole PCN area. So it's very blended, and I think that's the power of intergenerational, because it works with social care, it works with health, it works with education, with the Arts Council. There's a lot of different kind of pathways that we can access, because it encompasses everyone across the community.
And where do you look for inspiration or growth in what you do? Is there, like, there's an area in Wales or Scotland or Iceland or other communities that especially inspire you, or countries that have a system that favors work like what you do? Where do you look for grounded, developed, cultural,
to be able to develop practices within local areas?
like, are there any communities or any countries that have inspired you in what you do especially, or is it a global problem we're having with modern life, integrating music and using it to work with the elderly, etc.?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a very emerging practice across the world. So we work a lot with partners in the US and Canada, and in Canada specifically, they're only just kind of, in terms of government and understanding, they're only just at a point where music's even being acknowledged as, being this tool for well-being or for care. In the US, they're definitely rooted within this intergenerational world, not necessarily using music as the tool, but understanding where this sits. It's generally, it's these Western countries where age segregation is a thing. We're now thinking, how do we tackle this? But in the UK, it is all very emerging, and I think as an organisation, we are quite at the forefront of finding these new innovative ways, and that comes absolutely from partnership. I mean, at the heart of everything we do is local and national partnerships, and that's something that really excites me, is working with other organizations that have very similar synergy, or have a specific group or an idea that they want to come to fruition, and building something that's really unique and exciting, but has this incredible benefit for health and well-being. I did a work in Ireland, and they have such an incredible music culture, and
I know that's
yes. Yeah, I spent some time in Derry, and worked with the buskers, and what was incredible, without even knowing, we that such a theme of the event and the workshops that came out was obviously the troubles that took place in Ireland, and through the music, without me even kind of promoting that, was this conversation between generations, where they had a very different view of how that looked for the country. And through the music, and we did some songwriting, they shared their stories and created a piece of music that celebrated you know, Northern Ireland and their history and their culture and that exchanging of stories. And I think that's, you know, that's the power of creating these spaces where there isn't judgment and people have the opportunity to share. And you, as a facilitator, I was not that aware of that history, and so I was like,
Yeah.
you know, taking it all in and absorbing it all and giving
Yeah.
them the opportunity to share and talk. And you just learn so much. I think I'm
Yeah.
forever grateful of being part of these groups, and I take
Yeah.
so much from them every time I, you know,
Yeah.
them. Yeah.
About 15 years ago, I was house sitting in East London, a huge old pub, alone, and a Spanish friend calls, friend of the owner, and says, Remedios Amaya, the famous singer from Spain that sang in Volver in the Almodovar movie, she's performing at Charles Wells,
Mm.
and they would like to go to your place, not mine, to hang out after the concert because they don't want to go to a pub or anything. They want to be, is that okay? And I'm like, yeah, sure. So they came, and it was a bunch of proper Spanish gypsies, from a 17-year-old flamenco guitar player to
I've
Remedios.
just spent time in Granada where that came from, and I fell in love with flamenco music, like in the whole.
They were until 3:30 a.m.
Yeah.
in a huge living room, and they couldn't deal with me being so white and not singing. And I'm like, there's no way I'm gonna sing.
Mm.
And Remedios ended up singing Imagine from John Lennon, kind of cover.
Yeah.
So I would do the lyrics spoken, and then she would sing after it.
Mm.
I mean, she managed, even me, even I was integrated, because
Yeah.
she needed me to be a part of it. Like, you know, everybody was just, they kept all the time, every conversation ended up in some beat, in some game, in some song. It was just, it's in the blood. Like,
Oh, and
so,
there's something about how they play and how they sing is just the emotion that you feel. I mean, just hearing the guitar and it always amazes me how through plucking string there's just this such a soul and emotion that is transmitted. I mean, I would just sit there in awe
yeah,
of yeah, it's an
yeah.
incredible.
But when I was young, and, you know, thinking the only cool place was London or New York, you know, you would be in a local party in Spain or in Greece, and the grandpa would be dancing on the streets with a baby at 11 p.m. And you were like, this is so weird. But actually,
Yeah,
now you realize, no, that's the way society should work. It's
absolutely. And people
carnival,
are doing it.
song.
It's not a new thing, you know, people live like this. And music plays such a fundamental part in how they live and how they, you know, in their culture. We just, I think of just maybe just don't recognize it for the power that it has as much as these other the places that it's just intertwined in how they are in their very being. And I think there's stuff that we could definitely learn from all of these different groups and cultures to.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
What projects do you have that are down the line, even you know, if you can talk about them? Is there anything in the future that's really exciting you that you would like to do? Because you spoke about things like, you know, Israel and projects. Is there anything that you're doing that is a challenge that is very exciting, or what? How does the future look for you?
For me personally or for the organization? Both.
Both.
So a big part of the work that I'm doing at the minute as well is rooted in research. So I just finished my master's dissertation and was trying to understand, you know, we talk about music and intergenerational, but what is the actual mechanism that makes it work? So I was looking at that, and I'm working with the South Bank University at the minute to really dissect that model a little bit more. So kind of unpicking the projects and understanding, you know, what is it about this incredible tool that's.
Wait. Can you go there a little bit more? Because that sounds very interesting.
Yeah.
What is the mechanism? What is the basic of the mechanism that you can explain
Yeah,
without
so
a
I mean,
dissertation? Yeah.
okay, we have the two parts. So on one side you have music, which we said before is this universal language
Yeah.
that, you know, everyone can relate to, everyone can connect to. It's within our identity and, you know, everything like that. And then you have intergenerational practice, which encompasses which encompasses, the health sector, social care, education, the arts, the industry. So you have these two together. When you pull them together, you have this language that everyone can relate to, and you're working with everyone. So there's something here that can sit at the very hearts of our community, that can contribute to how our communities develop, to how our health progresses, to how we provide work and training, how we support health and well-being, all of these things. But it's understanding, if we I really want to know, breaking it right down, what is it about this paradigm that works so well, or has the ability to work so well, and where should it sit within this wider community ecosystem? So that's a big part of kind of, I want to know why. I want to understand what it is about,
And what is it? What's your hunch? What do you want it to be?
Well, I think it is those two things. So it's the fact that you have
the connection,
this connection together. And I think it is the idea that it's this all-encompassing, accessible medium that can relate. But, where does it sit within the likes of, housing, or community development, or all of these things? Like, actually, I believe that it can sit right at the heart of our community, so it can encompass everything and can be used as a tool, not just to connect generations, but also to connect sectors, to connect professionals together, because you're working across, so through our projects, connecting a care home and a school, that's two sectors of the community that are creating a link that can inevitably, like, what else can we do with that? And if we bring in a council, or if we bring in an NHS, you're creating this kind of network partnership that can enhance every person's aspect of how they live, and the care that they receive, or the education that they receive, or the training, or the whole life from start to finish. And I'm I believe there's a real it's so fundamental to how we can develop and create these better, more connected, cohesive, resilient communities for the future.
I mean, I totally believe, but to somebody that doesn't trust and doesn't believe, do you need science? Do you need anthropology? Do you how do you ground that?
So we're working on a project at the moment, and this is the thing is, when you're working in the NHS or in councils, they want the evidence, and of course that's understandable. I can talk until the cows come home about the power of music and the social benefits, but you need that quantitative side of things. So I'm doing a project at the minute that's kind of very unique. It's innovative in how it works. So we are doing a project merging the worlds of music and movement, and we are looking at testing cortisol levels in spit. So at the start of a 6-week project, and at the end of the 6-week project, we will collect kind of saliva, and then through that we'll be able to monitor increase of mood or decrease levels of stress. So that's a quantitative thing that we can take from this, and then using kind of very specific questionnaires, looking at depression and loneliness, looking at mood, looking at social connectivity. So something that through this methodology we can quantify that there has been a significant change or an impact, or not. That's also part of research, but is there a change that we can see? And then when you have something quantifiable, obviously people can question and argue, but there's something that you can take to the NHS, or you can take to the council and say, there is evidence here to suggest that by implementing this practice, not only does it have this multitude of social and social benefits for people, but also there is a scientific health benefit that can be taken from this. The cost effectiveness, the efficiency, the staff capacity, all of these things. If we can create a model that we can take, that like a package that can respond to issues that we have, and also agendas at the minute. I mean, I don't know, in the government at the minute it's all about levelling up communities, so providing opportunities to empower community individuals, groups to take action and be empowered over their own health and well-being and how they live, and all of our work there responds very much to those agendas.
Amazing. Because it's difficult. Like, I've gone through trying, for instance, diversity, trying to research and understand how it benefits in companies and in different and there's a point where I'm starting to see it more like I can go this far, but then there's a part of it that is just something that we need to understand that is needed for representation of different voices. Do you know what I mean? It's the same as with your case, like the scientific money in, happiness output, like all this pipeline. I think it's important to have a foundation where you can also, but you know, it is easy for people to start to get lost, and I'm like, no, this is about meaningful connections and communities, the priority.
But it's hard to quantify that specifically. And I think that's a lot of the work that we do. I always say to, you know, the men in the suits with the money, I'm like, come down and experience it, because you cannot deny the power or the feeling that it gives you if you're part of something like that, or if you know, it's feeling it is sort of believing it, if that makes sense. So I think that there is an aspect of you know, stepping out from behind the desk and coming and actually seeing the community and hearing the voices and being part of those sessions. And we found that actually to be quite a powerful tool when we're working with, you know, trying
absolutely
to is inviting those guys down to.
For me, the way I reason with it is, you know, diversity or work in the community has to be the reason why, and then the scientific foundation is the how and the push to it. But it's important that we acknowledge that these things are important above and beyond our ability to measure them and to.
Absolutely. Yeah. It all starts with passion. I think if people come in there with just a sole aim to understand why, you've missed the point, because it's about the process. So when we do a session or you're writing a song, it's not about what it sounds like at the end. It's about that process and the journey that the group took to get to that point, and how that felt, and the experience that they had, and how that's going to, you know, integrate into their life. It's, you know, it doesn't matter what the song sounds like. And I think it's very similar. Yes, it's great to have this data that we have here that people can see and recognize, but it's the experience, and it's the qualitative nature of music and connection that can't necessarily be put in a test tube.
No, it's, you know, because if you're trying to affect the way we belong, you have to use the data for what it's good, and use the experience and the process for what it is, and know who you're talking to and how to value those. And some of it is just plain justice and fair life, like you have to do it even if it's at a loss, even if it's, you know, like it's I love what you say, because it's also with our students in the masters, that's what we're trying to show them, is work like what we're doing here, discussing it with you, and then with the workshop, it is about the process. You know, you want a result.
Yes, results are good. Yeah.
That's what you want. But in the moment, you have to live for the process. And then learn how to make the best results happen. But you have to embrace the process and go deep into it. What options do I have in these processes? How do I put this into action? What impact does that? Yeah, exactly.
What learning can I take from all of that? You know, it's reflecting, you know, being reflexive. That's fundamental to this work, is you continue to grow and develop through that process.
Yeah. So if you were working with our students, you know, we have a group of 24 students roughly, maybe 20 will be joining this workshop. What activity would you give them to start the connection? How would you work, even if it was across Zoom?
To give them what? Sorry, to give.
If you were working with my students the way you work with the people behind me,
yes,
how would you start? What kind of activities would you start to get them connected and activated? Would you start immediately writing a song or performing a beat? What does?
No, I always start with trying to kind of reconnect to ourselves. I think sometimes we get on this sort of rat race of, you know, writing music or fitting our music into a box or all of this. But actually, if we take a minute and think about, you know, what does music mean to me? Like, why is it important to me? And how does it feel when I engage with music, and reconnecting to that? And then thinking about, okay, if it feels like that for me, what is this ripple effect? So I kind of, it's very much sort of that thinking and reconnecting process that I generally start with. And then we bring in different activities, and all of the work, and I would do this with the students, is very co-produced. So, you know, let's sit together and think about understanding who we have here in the group. Let's get to know one another, and then let's build some activities that can respond and feed to all of our passions and you know, how we want this group to be run. As a songwriter, I always, my default is songwriting, and I so believe that everyone has the power to write a song, whether that's, you know, for yourself or to connect with other people. A great activity that I start most sessions with is My Favorite Things, and we take the song from Sound of Music, My Favorite Things. And basically you sit with a group and you just think about all the things in life that are important to you. And it's such kind of a simple but effective way, because we get so bogged down in the negative, or, you know, you just kind of go through life not really reconnecting with what's important. So you sit and think, you know, oh, you know, walking on a hot summer day, or a nice warm cup of tea. And not only are you kind of being able to share the things that are important to you, but you're finding similarities with other people. So you're finding those connections. And then we rewrite the words to a song. So we take the melody of My Favorite Things, but we put in all of our own favorite things. So we've created a new song full of the things that we love. And that works with any group. So I've done it with care staff, I've done it with children, with intergenerational practices, we did it at a work event the other day. It's such a great exercise that celebrates individuals, but also, you know, groups, and provides that opportunity. So we would probably start with something like that, and then expand from there. I'm very big on, you know, creating a space where it doesn't matter if you mess up or if your idea doesn't work, because I mess up all the time. Times I start on the wrong chord, and you have to just, you know, but when you acknowledge that, you know, it's fine, whatever, this is a space where people can try things out and develop and explore and test ideas. A lot of the time you'll have students that maybe have thought of something that they want to try but haven't yet given it a go, and okay, let's try it together, you know, let's workshop it. And I think that's a really wonderful way of starting workshops like this. And I'll do it in sessions with older people. You know, is there a song that you want to sing? Should we teach it to everyone together? Or, you know, is there a dance routine that for a child that we can share? Or so it's just creating these really safe and creative spaces for people to explore.
I think if our students are able to grow into space and create spaces in which they can say, I don't know, what are the options? How can I find out? I don't know. It's like, there's a researcher I really like, Angela Duckworth, the one that came up with GRIT. And she will say it, even in the middle of a conference, she will point out at what she doesn't know and what she wants to learn. And I love that energy. It's so healthy, and you just feel people start breathing like, oh,
it's okay not to know. It's okay not to know something. Yeah.
Oh, do you know what I'm thinking that could be quite cool for the activity? What do you think if our students in the workshop, you will come back for half an hour to look at what they have done? What if they work on what you were talking about there, about My Favorite Things, and they do a group exercise in which they come up with the words and they perform it?
Great. Yeah, that would be fab. I have actually, because we do it so many times, I have worksheets if you want me to share.
Yeah, send it over, because I think more than because each week we give it a very different energy, and from what you're saying, what is coming through to me is I want them to experience that a little bit, to realize they can apply it as well.
Yeah, it'd be great on the back of that as well. I always ask people after we've done it, you know, how did that feel? What was that like? So maybe to also, we can do that on the chat, but I'd love to know what they took from that, what they, you know, how they could see that being a positive experience for people, you know, of all backgrounds, and you know, understanding what it is about that activity that's so powerful.
Perfect. Okay, send me the worksheet. Thank you. And we'll have that. Cool. Okay. I'm going to pause the recording in a minute. Do you have any questions or anything that you would like to add? Is there anything?
I think I've talked. I've talked and talked.
That was great. I mean, there was a lot you were sharing. That's super interesting. Thank you so much, Emily. That was amazing.
Thank you so much for having me.